So guys, we actually have a request topic today. Chris, take it away.
You betcha, John.
John always sounds like a radio host.
I know. So this came from Tom from our Facebook group, which we really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. He quote, next gen gaming, speculation on where it's going and what's going to define it. So that's really an open-ended statement, really, or question. It's like, where's next gen gaming going, and what is going to be the definition? Like, what is going to define
the highest of definition?
We're talking, well, that might actually be part of it, because notice that things are happening in 4K, higher frames per second, a lot more hardware.
For some games.
PC. And we're noticing that all of the hardware requirements for the software now is getting more demanding.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with the advent of VR, which it might actually be one of those things that we might need to talk about. What do you guys think is going to? Where do you think it's going? Where is our gaming and our generation? Where are we going with this? How fast? How clear? How amazing can gaming get?
Well, I think for a while now, video games have been leaving the physical copies, going digital. But I think the next generation is going to go the next step.
Can't say that. John gets upset.
I know. I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
I want my physical games.
But I think next generation is going to go next step, and we're going to leave the physical plane completely.
You think so?
If the next gen is cheap enough, we'll digitize our brains, and no one will be on Earth anymore. We'll all be in the internet.
See, I don't think we're going to go to all digital right away, because I still think there's just too much of an internet
Whoa.
issue.
Did you hear what he just said?
There's too much of a market.
That was the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard. You can let him get away with it?
I kind of stopped paying attention towards the end.
Okay.
I'm sorry, point of order. Everything Jonas said was crap.
This is opinion pieces. Everything is right.
We're all going to have synthetic USB ports plugged into our brains.
You can't say it's not going to happen.
So I'm talking about the non-crazy part of that answer.
Okay.
With the digital versus physical, I don't think we're to the point yet where we won't have physical, just for the simple reason why of that the internet speeds in a lot of places, not just East Coast, West Coast. We probably have decent internet connections and internet speeds. As you get into the middle of the country, not so much. And because of that, until we are able to actually make it or get it to a point where we're looking at fast internet speeds, nobody's going to want to wait 2 days or a day to actually download a digital game and be able to play with all the updates and everything else like that. So
it's true.
I think that we're still a little ways off from going fully digital. But even looking at the overall world right now, we're behind a lot of countries when it comes to even internet speed. Mostly because the cable companies control a lot of it, and they're terrible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just in our area, we have 3 or 4 different ones. We have the main one, and then we have 2 other ones that kind of, I think they just cut the one wire and they splice theirs. Yeah. They're like, hey, come buy us for $80,000.
So yeah, I think it's gonna be restricted based on internet speed for physical versus digital as of right now.
But where do you think it's going? Your speculation. You can make a wild guess.
I mean, if you look at we're talking, you can go back to when the Nintendo came out, and you look at where we are now.
Like the NES.
Let's just look at where we are now compared to the NES.
Okay, let's back up to 1980.
All right, you had a console hooked
right
up to a TV.
Okay.
And then you had a controller.
That hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed, which makes me say that there's going to be additions to that. But I don't know if there's ever going to be a variant or a different idea where that's not a thing. I don't know. Some interesting things to think about, what the Amazon Kindle Fire is and stuff like that, where it's a little USB HDMI thing that goes into the TV. Is that going to be a console one day?
It could. It could be, depending on the hardware and chipset that they design. I agree with you. I think that the fundamental controller in hand and television as your main medium is not going to change. I don't think that's going to change. A lot more enthusiastic people with a bigger bankroll may say, well, I could set up a room in my house to do a VR thing.
Yeah.
And that's all well and good, but that's not what mainstream can afford.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that last week with VR, whether or not it's kind of here to stay. And it's a one matter of thing, like from like personal use in your home, and you know, me, John, and Jonah talked about it in a sense of, I don't think it's practical.
There's a very small percentage of us that can afford to have a whole room dedicated to just a video game.
With the additional space and everything that you're going to need to have the space required to actually play the game.
Right.
So we were talking about last week too, is that the idea that, you know, something like that might eventually go to like a Dave & Buster's or like a different arcades or like these different experiences that you pay for, like a bowling alley or like or laser tag or something, somewhere where you would go where you would try it out. But I don't think
that's well and good though.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what it might be, what it becomes.
That's not mainstream.
Yeah.
I think what will happen, my speculation point is that the hardware in our consoles are just going to keep on getting faster as more of the chip makers find a way to cram more cores in their processors, and they're going to come out with something incredibly amazing. The trouble is they have to let like game software developers just kind of take the leash off and be like, okay, make it as fast or as, you know, slow as the game needs.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think the next gen consoles are going to look a lot like the consoles we have today. I mean, unless like maybe a little bit slimmer, maybe a little smaller, because as things get smaller and faster, there's also the cooling factor. So you can only you can't shrink it so much to where you're overheating this solid state thing anymore.
Unless you're Sony, because they're magicians.
I feel like next gen consoles won't be slim just because they want to have a slim version.
I think they do the slim versions to increase.
It is a marketing thing.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest with you.
Big, slim,
powerful and slim.
Yeah, powerful and slim. Yeah, right.
Pro version, extreme version part 2.
Yeah.
Next version.
But if you're looking at just the way that the consoles are now, they're closer to the PC infrastructure than they've ever been. Like, even like a lot of the stuff like Xbox Scorpio is pretty much going to be a less powerful PC.
And that's
the most powerful console ever.
Yeah.
And that's
revealed,
that's
or
like
unleashed.
what I'm thinking of, like consoles and PC are going to become so close in specs that it won't make a difference.
The thing though
The
with competing with PCs is that the consoles aren't. You can't upgrade the console. You can't like change the parts out.
Not yet.
Right. And I don't know if that's ever going to be a thing
People
because
have talked about it.
but I think they would lose a lot of money.
It would be like slots.
Yeah, like slots.
Cartridge.
This is my mod
This is
shit.
a GPU that's coming out. I'm going to put this GPU in.
Right.
Hard drive, I'll swap that out right here.
Well, here's the thing. Speaking of that, actually, I know jokingly, but that could be a thing if they think about it. If they can find a way to market it and patent it and do it that way, where the PC, any brand over there is going to be like, hey, what are you guys doing? You know, now it's too much of a PC, but they might have their own PlayStation CPU upgrade, and it's not, instead of buying, you know, like they always try to be like, this console's going to last you 10 years or this one's going to be this year. They might just come out with one simple thing that you just add to it. Like, okay, here's the new CPU, here's the new GPU.
The Xbox 360 already did that. Remember how the hard drive could come off the top and you just put another one on it?
Well, that's the start, but
that's a hard drive, though.
That's the hard drive.
But I mean, that's what you're saying.
You go back to memory cards.
And it's just coming, but like it's.
I think that's just because they couldn't fit it inside the console, so they just put it out.
The original one, the slim ones, you can fit it inside the console.
But PS4, or PS3, you can actually take out the hard drive.
You can do that with PS4 too.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. That's what it started at.
For the hard drives.
So the hard drive has kind of been around for, like I said, since memory cards. You always wanted more way to save.
The one thing,
or data.
The one thing I've noticed is that the consoles are trying to compete with PCs now, but when they release, they might be like the same level as a mid-tier PC, but they will quickly be overtaken by the PCs. There's no point in competing with them.
And you got to think about this too, is that the home consoles are meant to be the cheapest possible price that you can get. No, when I say cheapest, it's like the minimum standard of what you can pretty much pay for to get in your home and use it as a media center, game console, etc.
Yeah.
Like you see what happens when Sony or Microsoft start to kind of get a little bit too big with their prices. Like $500 with the Kinect for Xbox One,
Right.
the $600 fiasco that Sony did.
Right.
Your normal customer is probably, at least right now, is the sweet spot is probably $400 to $450, and that might be pushing it.
You can't price yourself out of the market.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what they're fighting right now, and that's why power, they're always going to be a step behind what PC is, even though the architecture of these consoles are very much PC. They have to double down on what's going to work and what's going to make it a viable option to not only make games on this console, but to bring them forward now.
But I mean, I could tell you, I could go home today and go to PC Part Picker and build a $1,200 console killer.
You could.
Well,
Or I could
General
build...
public? No.
Or I could
here's
build
an
an
idea.
$800 console killer.
Exactly.
Or a $500
Exactly.
console killer.
You could. General public?
no.
Cannot.
Well, here's the thing. What happens if they take that kind of idea where, say you go to Dell.com, Alienware, whatever, and when you buy a PC, laptop, you always have the tiers. You can have, okay, pick your base model, then what do you want? How much RAM do you want in it? How much, what OS do you want on it? You know, you can customize it. Will they ever get to that point where it's like, Xbox, choose your version. You want super, extreme, or just the base?
Could be.
But then here's another thing too. As a developer with games, be like, okay, you buy this version, this is what your game's gonna do. You buy this version, this is what your game's gonna do.
Well,
Don't make games too where it's just like it's pointless to get the new system.
That means you would have a console like PC. In PC games, you can set your variables. In other words, you can set all of your settings, your video outs, and everything else to be like maximum or ultra settings. And that means like consoles, what you're saying is if you can choose your parts, then the console itself would be like, okay, I have this chipset, I have this GPU, I have this much RAM. That means I can play this game at this many frames per second, at this, at this speed,
Because some people are going to be like, okay, it's, I want to pick, I'm willing to spend the $1,200 to get the best of the best, but I'd rather buy the console where it's already there. Then I just got to put a game in it versus a PC where I got to set it up, I got to update, I got to do the drivers all the time.
Make sure that it actually works, because a lot of time the biggest problem I find with PC sometimes is that, like, when certain games come out, like when Batman Arkham Knight came out, that game was broken on PC.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a port.
Injustice was broken on PC.
It's also a port.
Mortal Kombat was broken on PC.
It's a port.
But
there's a point there.
The non-ports sometimes don't work either.
No.
Let me finish my point, and I want you to finish yours. But it seems to be, and just based on different things that I read, is that when they design a game for PC, they can't take in consideration all the different variances of what you potentially have in your PC.
Yes.
So like an AMD, like a lot of times they might find that a certain CPU or GPU isn't actually processing the game properly, and they have to like release a patch in order to make that work.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, a PC a game developer will develop a game probably to optimize on their game engine.
Yeah.
Which means they'll be rocking probably NVIDIA 1080 Ti.
But probably is the idea.
Or they could actually, if they're developing a game, they probably have the latest and greatest GPUs. They're probably rocking Titans.
Yeah.
And they're gonna build their game to work on the highest possible specs. And then you have the option to bump it down, because you can always degrade it locally. But if the game's already set up to be like a powerhouse to run on your fantastic machine that you build, it's going to. You're going to be rocking like 4K. So
you're saying the problem with PCs is mostly when they actually port things?
Yes, when you're taking something from console to computer, the console games are already capped at a certain frame per second.
See, that confuses me though, because if it's a port job from it doesn't make sense, because like when they create the game, they're creating it on PCs and they're making a specification for the consoles.
They're making it for the consoles, which means that the whole way that they build that game is so that they don't make that. They don't crash your system, in other words.
Don't buy PC because all the games are made for console.
Not all of them.
true.
Not all of them.
That's
No.
not true.
Like, for instance, 7 Days to Die, bringing that up again. But that's a game that came out on Steam first, went through the whole beta, alpha, all that
Is that
stuff.
on console?
Yeah, and then
Oh.
it came out to PS4.
Okay.
I don't know if it was on Xbox One as well, but I just remember the PS4 version.
But I mean, like, going back to the question, it's like, what's going to define the future, I think, is hardware.
Well, I mean,
things are always going to get better looking.
Yeah, so
they're
here-
always going to get faster.
what I don't want is the same old spiel, like you're saying. Like, for instance, looking back at Atari, right? The reason the NES was so amazing was because now you actually had enough pixels to see something.
Render something, yeah.
Render something. Like, you actually had...
8 bits.
Yeah, like 8 bits. Instead of just
16
like a couple lines. Like,
64 bits.
some
Right.
Atari games you could see some, but you know what I mean. Like, it was just like a lot of, like, if you look at something like Frankenstein or all those games like Halloween, those horror games, anything really that's supposed to have a face, like, you don't recognize that looks nothing like the character's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I just feel like the games have just been progressively just getting better looking, and I don't know. What do you think? This generation now versus last generation. For me personally, I don't see any like amazing game
The share
play
factor
difference.
is the biggest thing from last generation that you could do this generation. The ability to share stuff with the PS4 DualShock controller and just immediately put it to Facebook or YouTube.
I'll
And
agree.
same with Xbox. So
I'll
the
agree with
connectivity with the general population or social media is probably what would be the defining factor of this. Of this generation. The defining factor of last generation is Xbox Live, hands down. Xbox Live.
Yeah,
and what
the
that did
ability
for
to
us.
actually.
To play online
Hands
with
down
each
with
other.
party chat, everything.
Right,
Xbox defined last generation because of that.
Yes.
Now, when we're talking about hardware, like, yes, I think game consoles are going to get more powerful. You're going to get higher frame rates, better fidelity graphics, this and the other thing. Controllers might change. When I say controllers, we're already looking at certain pro controllers, elite controllers that have like the paddles. I think eventually those are going to become standard. Like, it's just the way that's going to go. But like the things like the touchpad and the PS4 controller, that could probably go and never be seen from again. And I don't think anybody would have a huge problem with it.
Yeah, I don't.
Because nobody utilizes it. for the most
In
part.
games, you just use that as a button.
Yeah, or like yeah,
it is a button.
But honestly, with the short time I've had the Switch, the more and more I think about that, if they can get the power right, that would be the future of the consoles. If you can get the power right and the graphic fidelity, everything that you can get on a home console, and we're probably a decade away from getting like a crystal clear picture image with texture, like certain textures. That's the other thing of what like the PlayStation 4 can do, or like a high end PC. You're probably a ways away from that.
You're talking about solid state handheld?
Yeah.
Okay.
But with the Switch, like you cradle it in, the controllers pop off just like that. If, like I said, we talked about last week, if PlayStation went and did something like that, I could see that being the future of gaming consoles because you can take it with you. And it's not going full, hey, I want to play on my iPad, and it's not going full, hey, I just want a home console.
Yeah.
It's the meeting of two worlds, and if they can get the power and ability down properly, I think that's where they could head.
Yeah, well, that's
From a gaming console.
That's where I think they
PC's
actually
not
are.
going anywhere.
Because I think that's where I think the biggest successes with the Switch is the idea is you now have the ability to do both, and then there's already rumors of Sony coming out with a Switch killer or something like that.
There's
but that's
there's rumors already that PS5 is coming out.
So
just
yeah.
to try and keep up with the power.
The definition of next generation could be in the handheld properties.
A hybrid.
A
I don't
hybrid?
think. Well, maybe like
I don't think they'll ever take it away from your TV. They'll have both.
The TV is
Some
an
way.
excellent
You either
medium.
have a dock or just
TV
instant
is always
streaming.
going to be there. Yeah, even you, John, before when you're looking up stuff on YouTube, you're doing it all from your phone and it was coming up on the TV screen.
But that's what I mean. We're all carrying phones,
Exactly.
right? So now you're getting into the handheld stuff. What's to stop Android or any of the other phone carriers or developers to come up and make like amazing like phones that you can pretty much play these games
I mean, didn't PlayStation try making a PlayStation phone once?
They did.
Yeah,
But
it didn't
they-
end up well.
That was
on.
once upon a
That
time.
probably failed miserably
Yes.
because they don't make phones.
They don't also make games for the phones.
Yes.
Right.
They
So
don't
the-
have studios that make games
The
for the
thing
phones.
with the phone is, when I look at a phone, I don't look at it as a gaming thing. I look at it as a portable computer.
But
Yeah.
So
But
with everything you want to do on it,
But there are a lot of people out there that use their phone for gaming application.
If you're trying to get games though on your phone to, okay, so for instance, like you said, Android or iPhone, they come out with a phone specifically for games, right? That are going to be able to play.
I got a video game on here right now. I could show you.
I know, but I'm talking games that are going to take you away from your 4K television. Games that are going to replace your 4K television.
No, it's a different application. Like if you're at home, you're going to play on your 4K TV.
But here's another.
But if you're somebody like me with kids, a handheld's perfect because your kids are watching like SpongeBob on TV and you're playing a game.
But I think it's going to be hard for, let's say, Sony to come out with a phone that's going to take everyone away from an iPhone, an Android, just so they can be able to have
the market.
They still have to sell it as a phone. Like, that's the problem. They have to market it as a phone, and they're not going to pull away from what Android.
Because they're going to take all the resources and be like, okay, what makes phones amazing?
Yeah.
From a business point of view, it's not advantageous for any of the console creators to actually make a phone.
Yeah.
That's like it would be more in the phone developers to just let like game development for their phone. You know what I mean? It's like Droid's like, all right, program your game to work on this phone.
I don't play games on my phone personally, just because I like
John, you're so old now.
I'm like I said, I don't want to be taken away from that experience where I'm sitting there, you know, and you're like, I don't want to be like, for instance, we talk about that Transformers game that's coming out, and I don't want to be swiping my finger to fight things. I want to be hitting the buttons, hitting the triangles.
And they do have attachments now that go over your phone and makes it like
controllers,
switch or controllers.
Yep.
So they are working on certain things like that. Will swiping ever be replaced like core gamepads? No.
Because my biggest complaint is battery.
Yeah. I agree. And that's actually one of the bigger challenges for the the console developers is to create a handheld that will last for hours and hours on a lithium battery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because the battery adds a lot of weight to the unit.
And heat.
Also, those phone apps, they tend to take over a lot of storage space.
There's a lot of space, and RAM too. A lot of the.
And I'm thinking, like I said, if you try to take a game, you know, I'm talking like PS4 Pro, Xbox Scorpio, like the latest and greatest games, and try to put on your phone now, the phone specs or the phone, you know, for that to happen, your phone is going to cost so much more.
I mean, Destiny alone is going to be 70-something gigs.
Yeah.
No phone's going to have 70-something gigs
no.
unless you add more memory.
You're going to be losing something to play these games.
I don't think you're going to have the quality.
So I think we can all agree that phone gaming is not going to replace console gaming.
And it certainly won't define the future of gaming.
No, I honestly do think, though, like what they're doing with the Switch, like I think if Nintendo's successful, and this is what's weird about this whole thing, this generation was never supposed to happen. Like before PS3, like let's
we were supposed to be wiped out years ago.
Think about that.
Never came.
When PS3 and Xbox 360 were pretty much coming up, they were like, you know, console gaming is probably going to die. Like for a long time, they thought this is the last generation, and PS4 and Xbox One are going to be the last generation.
Yeah.
And here we are at the dawn, and post release of the Switch. And the dawn of the Xbox Scorpio.
Yeah.
Like, console gaming is not going anywhere at this point.
And
it's trending better with this generation than it was last generation on sales for both PlayStation and Xbox. Even though Xbox isn't making the sales that PlayStation is, it's still trending ahead of what 360 was.
I would have argued with somebody if they told me consoles were going to die.
A lot of people thought that. A lot of media thought that eventually the consoles were just going to go away and PCs or iPads or whatever were going to take over.
Because the hardware was always getting better, so I don't understand where that curve was going.
I think they locked that data with one generation.
Yeah.
And they kind of followed it, and then they predicted that they were going to get too old for it. They were going to do this, but they didn't realize.
But average video gamers are what, 37?
35.
I think what the narrative was that phone games were taking over because a lot of the younger people were playing Candy Crush and all that stuff.
And Minecraft on iPad.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a good question. Are we the
last?
The last? Like for instance, when we're in our 50s and 60s, is there going to be like new Xboxes or whatever the game? Are they actually going to be consoles anymore? Or are they just going to stick to, like you're saying, mobile games for people that want the instant gratification?
Are you going to play games when you're in your 50s and 60s?
Damn right I'm going to.
I feel like I will.
Today I feel like I will. Ask me in
there's some nights
35 years.
There's some nights where I'm like, I want to play games, but I'm tired.
But
But
too damn
you
old.
you look at what even Microsoft's doing it with not with Xbox particularly, but the Surface. They just came out with the Surface Pro or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like eventually, that is almost that's a laptop practically, or almost a laptop. Eventually, these Surface tablets are going to get powerful enough where they can run Halo 5 and you can sync up a controller. Mm-hmm. Eventually, that will happen.
That's coming sooner than you think.
Exactly.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, next week.
And because they're utilizing the unified Windows platform, like those games are going to be able to jump between PC to Xbox to Surface eventually. And who's to say that eventually it's just the Surface that's running a Halo 5, Halo 6, whatever, and you're hooking it up to the TV and that's the console.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, like, that's why I think where Switch is heading, where Microsoft's heading with the Surface, that potentially could be the next generation. That's going to be the future generation of consoles, I think. Mm-hmm. The mobile hybrid.
And once that flex screen, you know, the screen that looks like paper.
Yeah.
Once that actually becomes like a full consumer thing, where they're throwing it out there for people to buy, you'll be able to like stretch out the screen.
Yep.
Or I mean, like put it in your pocket, then take it out, and then boom, and then like you said, instant. Every room you walk in, it's jumping onto the screens you're in. And with, you know what I mean? That I feel like that's something that's where it's gonna go, console wise.
They could go in a completely different direction.
It could stick with just the same stuff too. Like I said, we've always had a controller and a console.
Yeah.
In some form or another. The question is, what is that console going to look like 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, I do hope that there's, you know, big leaps and bounds. Yeah. Like you're saying, this generation focused more on social media aspect, how to share content.
Factor. Mm-hmm. And that's just the world that we live in.
And not saying the games are bad, but you know, now we're talking about 4K TVs. Not everyone owns a 4K TV. What's the next one? They're going to talk about 6K, 8K.
There's already 8K TV.
There is 8K TVs.
But I mean,
there's already 12K, 14K
who can see the difference?
Cameras.
At this point, yeah, that's the other question.
Who can see the difference? I mean,
my eyes are pretty good.
When does it become a gimmick? You know, when does it become just a selling factor?
I think it is a gimmick. I think
HDR, I think, is the better improvement between 4K and HDR. I think HDR will probably have more of an impact on what your overall.
I'd rather see consoles focus on frames per second. Versus trying to become the next 6K display.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would like to see more ability to be more immersive into their worlds. Like, you know, I don't always necessarily like the straight path, but I like to be like, okay, I want to drive through this tree, I'm going to drive through this tree. I want 20 versus 20 battles or something like that.
You want enough processing power to pretty much have an entirely destructive environment.
Yeah, like I want bigger and badder. I don't want just like better looking.
Yeah.
You know, all the game makers they're focusing on graphics and making things more realistic. I feel like it's gonna go full circle and we're gonna get FMVs again. Yeah. Just everything's gonna be FMV rather than cutscenes.
Hey, you know what? There's a lot. Yeah, right. I was gonna say it goes back to 2D too, but there's a lot of indie games that are going to 2D. But it's interesting to see the quality of those 2D games because you know they're more.
There's more to them.
There's more animation in there, and I think that's awesome too. But you know that's what it is. Like instead of just going like better looking. I want it to be more immersive, better. Like you're in a let's say, like okay, Zelda for instance. You're on a boat, right? I want to be able to jump in the water, and then there's a whole underwater city.
I think there might be. I just haven't played Breath of the Wild.
I know, neither have I. But you know what I'm saying? Like anything, like Uncharted. You're fighting on a mountain, then you hang glide on a boat, and then you can jump in the water, and there's Atlantis. Like
called Just Cause, John.
Not Atlantis wasn't in that game. I looked, right. And I couldn't even go swimming that.
Let me reel it in. So, the final thoughts on how this is now speculation on where it's going and what's going to define it.
Holograms.
Final thoughts on what's going to define it.
I think it's going to be, and I can't believe I'm saying this now because like 2 weeks ago I probably wouldn't have said it, but the hybrid expectation of it, like they said, the ability to take it on the go as well as hook it up to your TV, it's just going to come down to the power of whatever the tech is.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, pretty much I just want more immersive, better looking, not better, just better looking, but more immersive, better whatever. And I think it's going to go more towards the Switch where it's going to be like everywhere.
Jonah.
I don't even care if there's a big jump. I just want another console. If it's like similar to the PS4, just stronger, fine.
Jonah wants to give you.
He wants to go back to PS2.
Just let me be a sheep.
Get some wired controllers.
My final thought is it's definitely going to be handheld hardware based, and I think that's what's going to define the next generation. But we're interested in what you guys think. Leave comments down below.